Okay, we're recording. All right. So I'm Elliot. The treasurer of NICFA, and this is my little baby. We're these little farmer to farmers. So this is the first of three we're gonna do. So in 2 weeks, so next Wednesday, we're gonna do one on greenhouse tomato growing. That's going to be Steve Munno and one of the crew over there from Assawaga Farmer. So it'll be the same format as this. A few announcements before we get into it. So we talked about that. If you're not already, probably by joining the listserv, you become a member of the new CT farmers. So if you haven't joined the listserv, just go to newctfarmers.com and do that, and you'll get all of our emails. Please also, we have check out the Climate Smart Ag Grant. That's up and open for applications. And that's a really wide range of possibilities with that grant. So please check that out. And then finally, NICFA, we're going to be hosting, we're going to doing these 3 Zooms. And then on Saturday, January 27th, we're going to be doing a new thing, a farmer to farmer one-day conference. We're going to be having it in Meriden at the public library there. They got a lot of really good space. So they got some good spaces, so we're able to rent that. So registration info to come. So just kind of keep your eye out for the emails. All right, so no further ado. So our speaker tonight is going to be Yoko Takemura. She is a former NICFA steering committee member. And also, so her and her partner Alex operate the awesome 1-acre Assawaga farm in Putnam, Connecticut, maybe a little more than an acre now. So she's going to be talking about how they use the cover crops in their farm. She's going to present for about 10 minutes or so. So please hold any questions or comments till she finished. Then we're going to open up we've never done this before, so I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go. We're going to open up the floor for any questions or comments. So if you have a question for Yoko, that's fine. Or if you just have a general question and then you want to chime in on that, we just ask that if you want to, we got a lot of people in here, so use the little hand reaction thing so we can call on you. And then you can also put any questions or comments in the chat, and also just if you want to meet and greet and say hello and introduce yourself in there, that's fun too. And if you're making connections in there, great. And then just reminder, you gotta to unmute yourself to talk and mute and all that jazz. So all right, so I'm gonna hand it over to Yoko, and she's gonna give a little presentation for us.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can everyone see this? Okay, great. So like Elliot said, I'm gonna present for about 10 minutes or less. I want to get through this quickly so we have a lot of time for the farmer to farmer conversations. But I just want to run through a little bit about our farm, and then the why, what, when, where, and how of cover cropping. And I do want to emphasize that we're still less than an acre, Elliot. And this is in a no-till context. So I'm not going to speak about using a tractor to terminate your crops and what kind of benefits come with that and so on. This is a strictly kind of no-till context for me and what I'm presenting on. I'm sure the conversation doesn't have to be no-till, but that's my context. So about our farm, we're in Putnam. On Nipmuc land, we grow organic vegetables and flowers with an emphasis on Japanese varieties. We're just finishing up our 6th season, but we purchased our land in 2016, so that's when we started preparing the soil. We're under an acre. We have one greenhouse that's part propagation space and part growing space, but we're adding a high tunnel as we speak. So starting next season, we'll have one high tunnel and one greenhouse. So we had 3 full-time employees this year, and that's not including me and Alex, who also work full-time. So that's 5 full-time workers on this piece of land. We go to a Thursday farmers market in Boston, and we also have a farm stand on site inside our barn every Saturday. And that goes from May to Thanksgiving. We do have some wholesale outlets, but we rarely have excess. So like this year, we didn't really sell wholesale. We don't grow in the winter, and like I said, this is going to be within a no-till context. So why cover crop? So, you know, the biggest thing is that we want something to be photosynthesizing in our field, in our soil, at as much as possible throughout the year. Because photosynthesis means that we're feeding the soil microbes, which in turn benefits your soil structure, your water drainage and retention, nutrient retention and access, and so on. So that whole package. Of course, we're growing vegetables, and it tends to be single crops per bed. So doing cover crops means that you can introduce a wide range of species diversity, and that's your chance to do so. We did dabble in some intercropping in the past, but it's proven to be a little bit, impractical sometimes with employees. So we've scaled that back. So this is really our chance to introduce some different species. Of course, it helps with erosion. And I totally forgot to write this in, but of course it benefits your performance of your cash crops too, that follows it, and it just makes everything grow healthier. So this particular field that you see in the picture, this is an entire field. We have 6 of these, not including the greenhouse and the high tunnels and the flower beds, but 6 of these big fields. And this particular field was in summer cover crops for a pretty long time, and we terminated it and put our fall crops in. And it was kind of a testament to what cover crops do, because every single bed in this field, it just performed really well in the fall, and it had different crops in each bed. So that was like a really nice kind of proof that all this effort and energy that we put into cover cropping really pays off. And so that was like a really good example, because the only sort of commonality or common denominator between these beds was the summer cover crops. And you guys all know that you don't always get perfect beds of crops in every succession of those crops that you do. So, and it's beautiful. So what do we cover crop? So these are the things that we put in. It doesn't really matter what you put in. Like I said, it's just important that you put in as many different species in the mix, because that means you're feeding different, types of microbes in the soil. This is just, just to get you started. Like Elliot said, this is going to be available, so you can, check this out later. But basically, if it's relatively, easy to access and it's cheap, it's, you can go for it. If you have any seeds left over that you don't plan to use anymore, that can go in. I do want to mention that we do kind of look at carbon to nitrogen sort of ratios, or it's better to say like grass versus like broadleaf. So we usually do about 50-50 or 60% grass versus 40% broadleaf. When do we put these in? So you'll see the dates here. One thing to note, I guess, is the fall cover crops. We do it right up until late October, like the last day of October, if we need to. The way we do cover crops, I'll show you how, but basically it doesn't matter if it only grows like an inch. We still think it's beneficial in that it's there's a little bit of photosynthesis happening, but it also locks in the mulch that's on the bed, and it kind of prevents it from blowing away in the winter and the spring. So I like it for that reason too. So where do we cover crop? Every bed gets at least one cover crop. We have about 110 or so 100-foot beds, and half of all the beds get 2 cover crops per season. So you can imagine we do a lot of cover cropping. Sometimes I feel like our employees, half their time is spent on cover cropping. And yeah, anytime between cash crops, we put if there's any amount of time that's more than 3 weeks long between cash crops, then we put in a cover crop. Or we try to anyway. So as you can see in this video, in the photo here, most of our beds are always mulched with salt marsh hay. And so our first step to seeding cover crops is to rake the mulch aside. And this is kind of the same process for our cash crops too. So we rake the mulch aside, we prep the bed, which involves broad forking, fertilizing, putting our homemade compost down, raking it smooth again, and then broadcasting seeds onto that. So it goes relatively fast if you take away the mulching part of the process. And then we use a bed roller. It's Johnny's the dibbler that we use, and we put some heavy rocks on it or something else that can be heavy so that it tamps the soil down to get that good soil to seed contact. And then we place the mulch back on and make sure to water. The exceptions are early spring and late summer. Early spring, we don't put the mulch on because we want the soil to heat up. And in the late summer, one problem that we come across is birds like to come and eat the seeds. I think they're cowbirds. Yeah, and they'll just pick it right through the mulch. So sometimes it's effective to put row cover down, and it prevents the birds from eating seeds. It seems to be just that part of the season though, that the birds go after it. Termination, we flail mow it like in the picture. And then depending on what part of the season it is, if it's overwintered cover crops like rye and hairy vetch, then we tarp for 3 to 4 weeks. And the reason why we do this instead of letting the overwinter cover crops get really tall and big, we've done that a couple times in the past, and it's just if you're going for a no-till approach and you have really tight spaces, it's just really hard to manage. And also rye's the allelopathic effect on other crops is just so large on our farm because our beds are so tightly spaced. So we've kind of moved away from letting the rye get large or any of the overwinter cover crops, and we kill it before it gets more than, I'd say maybe 6 inches would be kind of max. Then we'd like to put the tarp on. And then the spring and summer cover crops, we mow and then solarize. So a sunny day that's more than 75 degrees is great. You don't want to put it on for more than a day or two because it might affect the soil biology. But in our case, because there's so much debris on the bed after you flail mow, that's kind of a protection between the plastic and the soil that we're not too worried. But yeah, we usually take it off after a day or two. And then of course the fall is the winter killed ones you don't need to worry about too much. But if the winter killed ones in the spring are quite dense, then we'd actually flail mow or even weed whack it just because it's so woody sometimes. But I think that's it for my presentation. So how did I do? Oh, I went over a little bit, but that's it for this portion.
All right. Oh, do you want to unshare your screen, Yoko? Oh, there you go. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Yoko. That was really very concise. Appreciate it. All right. So, all right, let's open it up to the crowd. If you want to comment verbally, just stick your hand up there so we can call on you, or you can just start blasting the chat with questions or comments or whatever works for you.
Well, I have a question, Yoko. In terms of management, you're talking about, a significant amount of percentage of time of your labor, but also the cost of seeds, to keep up this season through season. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the seeds it's not that much. I would say it's like a few $100s for the cover crop seeds. which I think is well worth it given the benefits to your soil and, you know, your cash crops that follow it. And yeah, if you store it well too, if you don't use it one year, you can use it the next. It's not like it's gonna go bad. In terms of labor management, the reason I feel like the reason why we can spend so much time on cover cropping is not to like I don't know, show off or anything, but our weed level is very low. So we don't have to spend time weeding. And I feel like that gives us I feel like because of that, I can justify using our time on cover cropping. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Domingo. All right. We have a question from Kyle from Mapleview Farm. Do you plan your cash crops around the cover crop schedule or vice versa? Also, do you find the need to use compost and fertilizer too?
yeah, I feel like in the past I did try to do the cover crop first and then kind of, you know, put the cash crops around it for some reason. But now it's more the opposite. So I just plan out my cash crops and then I see what cover crops I can put in. But my crop plan is pretty complex. I definitely have like solid blocks of cover crops, and so there is some kind of like arranging that I do that makes sure that, you know, a whole field is cover cropped or at least half a field, or it's like blocked a little bit. But there are definitely fields where it's like here and there it's cover cropped, so it depends. But what was the second part of the question?
Oh, do you find the need to use compost and fertilizer too?
Oh, so it depends on the part of the season, but we make our homemade compost, and that doesn't become available until July at the earliest because, you know, we have to have ingredients to make the compost with, and we only get farm waste, like field waste, from starting in like late May. So we don't put in compost in the early part of the season, but definitely in the fall, we put in compost, and we always put in a little bit of fertilizer too, just to, you know, because, you know, you kind of want to treat it like a cash crop too. You want them to perform well and have, you know, all the necessary nutrients that they need.
Awesome. All right. So our next question is from Janelle. Has your cover cropping scale increased over the years? And how do you balance crop plan needs, cash crops versus cover cropping on a small acreage?
Definitely, yeah, we've scaled up. I mean, I think our first cover crop was 2019 or something, and it was just trying out peas and oats kind of thing. And now it's, you know, I have maybe 8 to 10 different species in a mix, and, you know, different sets of cover crops depending on the season. So it's definitely gone up in scale and complexity. But like I said, I still do my crop planning around the cash crops first because that's, you know, what I need to be producing, and then I fit in the cover crops. So it's not impacting really how much I need to grow, really. It's just taking advantage of the times when your cash crop isn't there. And you know, if you, for instance, have like a lettuce bed that you finished harvesting from, that's still, you know, you can leave it in the bed and that's still photosynthesizing. And I think that's like better than just cutting it off and not having anything in there until the next, you know, cash crop. But like I said, if there's any window more than 3 weeks that I have between cash crops, then yeah, I'll put my short summer cover crop in. Or, you know, whatever else. So it doesn't affect my cash crops that much.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So Justin says, thank you for presenting. Do you have favorite cover crop types and or mixed cover crops like oats and peas together?
So you saw, so I shared on one of the slides the things that I have in for each season, and that's not just options of what you can put in, that's like what I put in every single one of those. So, each of the mixes have, 8 to more than 8 or so species in it. And but having said that, the biggest component of each of these mixes are either oats, peas, rye, those like kind of, really common ones. Those do take up like the bulk of the mix. But and then I sprinkle in like, the sunflower seeds and the mung beans and phacelia and da da da. So but seed sizes are very different. Like phacelia is like tiny, so you don't really need that many to like get a nice stand of phacelia. It's just a little sprinkle and you get a pretty nice, density of that. So it's just, you have to kind of play around with it and see, you know, what levels, you want to go up and down. You have to seed it to see how it comes up, and you can kind of play around with the amounts of each. What was the other part of the?
I think that was it.
Okay, maybe I had another thing in my mind, but
If you have a follow-up, Justin, feel free to pop it in there. All right, so next we got Andrew. So he says, solarizing, do you use black tarp for overwintered and clear for summer? And how many seasons do you get out of your tarps?
the tarps are at this point at least 7 years. We've used it for 7 years, and I don't see any deterioration. Of course, over the years you start getting like little holes here and there, but for our purposes, it's not, if there's a hole, just, cover it with a rock or something. So as far as I'm concerned, I think we can use it for many more years. The solarization, just, we use old greenhouse plastic. I just got it from CT Greenhouse Co. because I think they just have like a pile. So that should also last a long time. Of course, if it's not being used, like don't leave it out in the sun. Try to minimize its like UV degradation as much as possible, I guess. But like I said, because it's only out there for like a day to kill a crop, it's not like it's out in the sun for that long if you think about the whole season and adding up those days. Yeah, you just want to make sure that the clear plastic is laid out like tight, so you're really maximizing the heat inside. If it's loose, wind's gonna get through, it's not gonna heat up as much. Just make sure it's like sealed tight.
Awesome. All right. Next up, Tonica is wondering, is it too late to put rye in? I just got mine in the mail.
Yeah. I mean, I go really late, but this is a little too late. Sometimes you kind of like think, oh, maybe it'll be a warm fall, which it was this year. So we had winter kill cover crops going in until like early October. And yeah, it's probably a few inches tall. So but yeah, at this point it's a little too late. I would say like late October is pushing it, so with rye and things. At least that's my experience. So I don't know if anyone has experience doing it later than that.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone has had luck with rye past November 15th, let us know. Charlene Rodriguez is wondering about where you get your cover crop seeds from.
It's a mix, so I get it from green, what is it, green cover seeds? I'm drawing a blank. I think that's what it's called. Let me just check. Yeah, green cover seed. I also get it from yeah. I also get it from the bulk, the NOFA's bulk what is it called? The bulk sale from NOFA in the spring. Yeah, it's called Green Cover, greencover.com. And then I also get it from Progressive, which is the place in Massachusetts that's really close to us. They have all sorts of farming like tools and everything that you they're a Nolts supplier too, so pretty much anything in the Nolts catalog they carry. And also from Johnny's and High Mowing, and yeah, just a bunch of different places. Just kind of like you can compare the prices and see, you know, what you can get. Of course, we do try to get as much organic as possible, but like a lot of things I can't, like I don't know, like spring lentil or something. So yeah, just a bunch of different sources.
Awesome. And then just if anyone wants to emote and verbally ask a question, you're totally welcome to. If
Or have like found good sources for
yeah, if you want, if got other sources, if you want to chime in, please do. All right. Oh, so Justin has a follow-up. Follow-up with the seed mixes. I'm assuming you buy each type bulk and mix it yourself. And he says, do you vary the mix at all based on soil testing?
Yeah, that's the other thing that I was gonna talk about. So one year I did buy mixes from Green Cover, and it included some things that didn't work out for us. Well, namely the brassicas that were in the mix. At that time we were having a lot of flea beetles, and it was like you know, you sow a bed of the mixed cover crop seeds, and every brassica was just had flea beetles on it, and I just felt like it was like giving food to these you know, the pests. So that was one of the reasons. And I do like to be able to control the mix, because some things, like, you know, some things that you think that it's a winter kill, but some things survive, or some things that you think are pretty hardy just, you know, die in like a light frost. So yeah, I really did my research and made sure, like, okay, like spring lentils wouldn't work in the fall because that's not as hardy as you know, winter lentils. So yeah, I definitely mix my own. So it does take a little bit of time, but I do like 20 bed batches or something at a time. So I just mix a whole bunch of seeds, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then I just scoop out like, you know, per bed. I know I just write on a little tape on the bucket and how many pounds per bed to use. And so I don't have to be mixing seeds all the time. Oh yeah, one thing to note, we did a lot of sorghum Sudan this year, and it does not die with solarization. So it's a great like biomass and all that, but we had to cut each one out, so it was really cumbersome. So if you have a tractor, I think it's fine, but yeah, they're gnarly. Oh, sorry, was there a second part of that to that question?
Oh, just if you were checked your soil testing before you decided where to cover crop.
No. One thing, what are they called? The guys that do the Haney test, they have like this information sheet, I'm sure you can access online, and they tell you the C to N ratio and what, like, how that benefits the soil. So if you're interested, you could go and read about that. And so you'd be kind of adjusting your C to N depending on what your soil needs. But for us, we don't really do that. We did that a little bit, but like looking at the Haney test and seeing what it needs, but we don't really do that anymore.
Awesome. All right, so we got a question from John Taylor. How do you deal with keeping the soil covered this time of year, when you still have carrots and lettuce and other crops in the field? Since it's getting too late to plant covers, like what, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, John, like what do you do with ground that you're still getting stuff out of the ground, so you can't put a cover in?
Mm-hmm. Oh, hay mulch. Every bed is hay mulch on our farm. So as soon as the carrots come out, I mean, if it's this late in the year, as soon as it comes out, it gets mulched. So so that's something that's direct sown. Obviously that doesn't, when we prepare soil for carrots, of course it's not mulched. And that goes for all the direct sown things like radishes and turnips and arugula. But most things that we transplant are mulched. So for instance, like our spinach, we transplant into a bed that's already mulched. So we don't have to worry about doing anything to that bed at the end of the season. Since, I mean, the spinach doesn't really die, but it's mulched, so you don't have to protect it in any way.
Cool. All right, so we have Domingo with a question. Says, other than keeping up a diversity of soil biology, do you see cover crops having an impact in nutrient balance in your soil, or do you still find deficiencies that need amending?
I mean, yeah, the benefit of the cover crops are, you know, of course it's feeding the microbes, and that's what's helping the plants access what they need. So in that way, you know, technically if you've got really healthy soil, you shouldn't have to worry that much about it. But having said that, we definitely do feel like we need to add some minerals if it's low. Like I feel like this year with all the rain, definitely need to replenish my boron. We haven't done that in a couple of years. And I feel like some crops suffered from that maybe. So yeah, it's not like cover crops solve everything, and you know, you don't have to add anything after uh because you're doing that. We certainly do add minerals and of course fertilizer too if we need it.
Thank you. All right, let's see what we got. From Callie, is there a minimum amount of time you need to wait after you've solarized?
No, you can do it, you can plant right away.
Okay. I guess this is slightly off topic, but let's just go with it. Marley's wondering, what do you like for fertilizer?
Oh, so this usually I use North Country Organics. Well, we mix our own. Basically our phosphorus is really high, so I don't add any phosphorus, but our potassium is very low usually. So if we are gonna fertilize, that means nitrogen and potassium for us. And the nitrogen is a Pro Booster, the 1000 from North Country Organics through Norfolk Bulk. And then the potassium is it's Fertrell's kelp meal 1500, I think. I can double check that. I did try Neversink's blend because it already comes with nitrogen and potassium, which is like in a way kind of nice, but it's so like fine powder that I do like North Country Organics, you know, pelletized. I don't know why. I just feel like it's like maybe less quick acting and you're not breathing in like, you know, sometimes it's windy and you're putting it down. I feel like it blows away, you know, when it's so fine powder. So yeah, we'll definitely go back to the Pro Booster from North Country Organics. Let me find that. But yeah, you can keep going, Elliot.
All right, we got a question from Andrew. So it says, as far as planting your cash crops after the covers are killed off, how do you deal with the residue in terms of like direct sowing versus transplants?
Wait, is this in the context of cover crops? Like if I'm cover cropping?
Yeah, so like yeah, so I guess if you've killed off the cover crop, is there like junk left over that's going to prevent you from direct sowing? that you
Oh,
have to
right,
deal
right,
with?
right. Yeah, so this year was interesting because it was so cool. Solarization actually wasn't super dependable. Parts of it were because we sowed oats so densely that it just wouldn't die and we had to cut it out. So that was a pain in the butt. But if it works well, I mean, we just use a leaf rake to kind of rake off the debris, the cover crop debris, and we're able to do anything direct sow with a jang or transplant. The one thing that I mentioned during the presentation was the winter killed stuff in the spring. Sometimes if they did get really large and they died like that, it's pretty like woody and you get a lot of like, woody things sticking out. So that's when we use the weed whacker to actually whack it really close to the ground so that we can direct sow into it. Transplanting is not a problem if you have, little debris or woody bits. It's not a problem at all. But if you need to direct sow, then it really helps to actually weed whack low to the ground. The flail mower just doesn't get low enough for that. So
60% of the time, it works every time. I was sort of on the same vein, wondering about winter rye. Do you find residual rye coming back up after smothering with the black tarp? And if so, how do you deal with that? Says she hasn't been able to. Monique says she hasn't been able to terminate winter rye without turning it in the spring.
So no, we haven't had a problem with it coming back. So like I said, we don't let it get more than, I would say, like 6 inches tall. And honestly, we probably kill them more around like 3-4 inches. The bigger it gets, the longer you have to keep the tarp on. So if you're gonna try to kill something that's like 6 inches long, then I would like definitely at least 4 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks, that you need to have the tarp on. But for us, it's been very effective. And the really nice thing about that is you're warming up the soil at the same time. So once you uncover it, it's like spring plants are ready to go in and they get to go into a really nice and warm bed.
Tonica is wondering, you mentioned a fertilizer that had high potassium.
Oh yeah, I was like looking it up.
Okay. Kyle, he says, I've used Albert Lee seed and Walnut Creek seed for good selection of bulk organic cover crop seeds.
What is it called?
Albert Lee and Walnut Creek.
Cool.
I think I'm gonna call out Paul here. Paul, are you listening? My boss here at Fort Hill, just to kind of give us the other end of the spectrum. Just talk a little bit about we have a no-till drill, which is sort of the other end of this cover crop world. Just if folks can hear a little bit about that, generate conversation there if there's interest.
Hi. What do you want me to talk about, Elliot? Just
talk a little bit about 2 minutes on evolution from I think a lot of folks or some folks may have the regular drill, and then how the no-till has changed that and the pros and cons of that.
okay. Yeah, so our farm is still primarily tillage based, and when we're done with a crop, we definitely want to get a cover crop in there as soon as we can. So for years we had an old drill that we picked up from a small dairy farm situation that was going out of business a long time ago, and it required a lot of tillage, like kind of turning in crop residues and stuff. Recently we were able to get a no-till drill, and it's a tractor attachment that basically punches a line in the ground and then has shoes that drop seeds in, and it's pretty good because I think on a lot of vegetable farms there's kind of two sets of tillage. There's the tillage to get the crop in, and then there's the the sort of the cleanup tillage to then plant a cover crop. And so we've eliminated half the tillage involved, and that's been a really great time saver, and eliminates a big chunk of turning residues and crop residues and stuff like that we no longer have to do. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people are maybe at a smaller scale. I'm trying to think about how if there's like smaller, like a BCS version of that, and that nothing's coming to mind. So I think you need to have a tractor to pick this thing up. But if you're looking to get cover crops in without doing a lot of tillage, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, Elliot, I actually remembered something with the Haney test and the carbon and nitrogen. I don't think it matters that much if you're not like incorporating your cover crops into the soil, at the end of it. So I don't know. That was my thought. Because it's different for, tractor based when you're actually incorporating that biomass into the soil, right? So in our case, we're not doing that. So it's a different process.
Cool. Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
I have a question for Yoko. Have you discovered any like you were saying, like cover crops don't solve every problem, but like, is there any like unintended consequences for like disastrous cover crop situations where you like it generated a bunch of pests or you couldn't mow it or turned, because we've had times where like crops have turned into like hemp in the field and stuff like that and bound up mowers and all that jazz.
Yeah. Well, that's why we don't let rye get large anymore, because it was a total catastrophe actually, because it got like 8 feet tall or something, and all the cash crops that were next to it were totally stunted, and you can tell because the rows that were closer to the rye were all stunted and the rest of the beds were fine. And then our employee that year was allergic to the rye pollen, and she was also allergic to the actual ryegrass. So like, when we were collecting it, her arms just like would just be covered in hives. It was just like a double whammy. Oh, and also with that, we ended up having to, because it wouldn't, we couldn't flail mow it because it would just get bound up. So we had to get our friend Nick from Bottle Farm to use a huge scythe to like actually cut it down. And then after that became a great breeding ground for voles because of all that cut down rye and just all the little homes and nests and tunnels you can make under that. So we had like an explosion of voles after that, and like literally every single thing about the rye was disaster. So that's when we swore off rye and we kill it. And it's really nice to tarp in the spring, because you get that benefit of it. It's like photosynthesizing all winter long, unless you get snow, which I'd prefer, but if not, then you got the rye and the other things. We got winter barley, winter wheat, like hairy veg, crimson clover, all that is in there too. And they're all, I don't know how much they're photosynthesizing, but at least it's something green that's in the field during the winter. And then it works all the way up until April, and then you kill it. So I don't necessarily like miss having them around for a couple more months after that, And then I would say the sorghum sudan was a pain in the butt this year because I wouldn't die from the solarization. But other than that, I mean, yeah, they're great.
Then I couldn't remember if you said you use brassica. Do you use brassica mixes? And then if they're mixed in, does that screw up your rotations? Because like half of what we grow is brassicas anyway. So does that make it?
I wouldn't be worried about that from that angle. there's like rotation on our farm is kind of like you know, it's not that much of a thing because it's like, yeah, I would say like 60% of what we grow are brassicas and then another 40, I don't know, maybe not 60, but when you, because there's so many short ones too, it's hard to quantify, but a huge portion is brassicas and quinopods. So it's hard to rotate everything. That's why the cover crop is nice because yeah, you're breaking it up. But I still wouldn't be that concerned if a brassica was in the mix. We just stopped doing it just because of the flea beetle situation, which we had very little of this year. So I guess we could have used it. But and also I hear that quinopods are really good in cover crop mixes, studies. So if you have any old like beet seeds or spinach seeds you're not going to use anymore, just throw it in there.
We have a great Soga cover crop. Kyle has a question. Have you seen any pest or disease reduction in cash crops from using all the covers?
I mean, you can't tie it directly to the cover crops. Just as you can't tie anything to anything in farming because there's so many variables. But one thing that, you know, every year I feel like our crops get healthier and healthier. And obviously, you know, cover cropping is one big part of what we do for fertility. So I think that, you know, does speak to the power of cover crops. And also one thing I've noticed too this fall was a lot of things that I feel like could have potentially died. Our farm got down to 19 degrees last Sunday night inside the greenhouse, and it's not a heated greenhouse, but still the sensor was inside the greenhouse. So it might have been a little colder outside, but like everything that we wanted to like still harvest out in the field, we're all okay. And I feel like part of it is that healthier plants are able to withstand, you know, cold temperatures. So like our lettuce, I was really happy that the shingiku was alive. You know, lacinato kale, you know, things like that. I just feel like, and it totally depends on other things too, like how quickly the temperature drops during the season. So I feel like they did have a nice kind of like introduction to the cold this fall. So there's that too, but I feel like our crops are generally healthier.
Awesome. All right, we had a question from Monique about buckwheat. When do you terminate it? Have you ever let it go to seed? Parentheses for buckwheat flour.
I mean, always, I think we've all had buckwheat that's gone to seed. No, of course we try to get it before it goes to seed. But yeah, it just I mean, I feel like it hasn't gone to seed in the last few years, but yeah, it's quick. Like I said, I mean, our short summer mix is intended for like a 3-week, 4-week window. So it's like in and out. And then if it's planned that way, then you don't really let it have a chance to go to seed. So yeah, I would put that in. Yeah, I'm very careful not to put that in somewhere that I want that cover crop to grow for, you know, a good while. I would never put buckwheat in.
Awesome. So we're getting towards the end. Just before folks drift away, I just wanted to thank everyone from coming. We had a really great turnout. It's up like 30 people. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for the next one's in 2 weeks. So if you like this, and I hope you did, please sign up for that one. So if you have any any more burning questions. Also, Yoko's going to hang around for a few minutes after 7 if you want to chat more. She's generously offered to do that. But if you have any more burning questions, or let's just say anything, just open it up, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can use your mics.
Yeah, we want to hear your wonderful voices or your chit chats.
The this is when it goes all silent.
So have you totally moved away from rye, or you just kill it early now? That's
Oh,
the,
no, we definitely do a lot of rye still. We just kill it early.
okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yoko, is there a way to do what you do without the big sheets of plastic?
I
And
know.
I'm not asking that from an environmental perspective. It's more just, I hate dragging big sheets of plastic. Elliot and Lauren, were awesome farmers in their own rights and worked at Fort Hill, got really into it. And we got big sheets of plastic and, I hate them. So is there a way to do this without hating plastic?
Oh my God. Sadly, I can't see how you would do the other cover crops, with the exception of the winter killed ones are obviously, you can do as much of that as you want. And of course, yeah, even if you let the rye grow up and you do the crimping and all that, I still think you need to put a tarp over that too. So other than winter kill ones, I think you need plastic. And for us, we actually have really small pieces of clear plastic. So it's not like the large black tarps where it's like, at least ours is 4-bed wide, so 4-bed by 100. So those are a pain. But the clear plastic, or because we got the scraps from CT Greenhouse Co. from Toby and them, they're actually like 35-foot sections that only cover 2 beds, so it's really small. So in terms of like handling it, it's not that bad at all. It's pretty quick to uncover. The only part that takes time for us are moving the rocks. If the rocks are already there, putting the clear plastic on is actually really easy, and taking it off is really easy. But it's like, if you're doing a section where there are no rocks, and you're spending like so much time moving rocks, and that's like the one task that our employees hate to do. So yeah.
Do you use any landscape fabric in your system?
We do temporarily. Right now we only have it around our deer fence, because I found that last year we tried to do it with wood chips, and the turkeys, as soon as we put wood chips down, the turkeys would come and like completely wreck it. So, and that was just not a good enough weed suppressing like barrier. So we have landscape fabric around the fence, and then some like next to some wooden paths and stuff, but barely any. We currently have 2 on a path, just because we dabbled in living pathway, and it turned out to be a disaster. So we decided to kill the living pathway with the landscape fabric, but that's coming off next year, so it's just temporary.
Have you ever had any issues with one problem we had, because we were covering a lot of beds at a time. We were covering like 5 beds at a time, 300-foot beds. Like when if it would rain really hard, we'd have like kind of a mini flood trying to get off. Have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, when it comes to the black tarps, not so much the clear plastic, because that goes on a hot day for 1 day, so it doesn't really have a chance to collect water. But the black tarps, for sure, there's like, you have to figure out how to, get rid of the water first and not create like a crazy flooding situation. So yeah, you have to be like tactful. And where to channel that water. But it hasn't been a huge problem. But like I said, because we only tarp the overwinter stuff, we don't use tarps that often either. It's really just in that span of a few weeks in the spring. So
you're mostly using them to kill cover crops, and but they're not necessarily like weed suppressing.
no.
They're not, because I think they were originally built as like they're gonna kill the weed seed bank, and we never experienced that. We had some like
Oh, with the tarp?
remarkable. We had just crazy flushes of weeds after having the tarps down.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's not right. I guess some farmers might use it for that reason. You could like water it first and then seal it with the tarp, let the weed seeds germinate, and you get that one flush. But yeah, I don't believe in getting rid of weeds that way.
Okay, that's because I think there was some billing of that. I just don't the heat. I don't think it could generate enough heat, and
Right. Yeah, and then
in some places.
right. And then were you asking about the landscape fabric because that could be instead of
Well, just because what we're doing this year is we're trying to prep the spring beds now, and then cover them with something so they don't spend all winter like washing or like eroding and all that
Yeah.
just there. So the idea is it's versus instead of putting tarps down, you use the landscape fabric, and it's permeable, so you don't have to deal with like water moving all winter, sort of thing.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think
in the
that's better
spring you
than
just peel
not
them off and plant.
Yeah. I think it's better than not having anything on there.
Yeah.
Um,
I kind of wanted to go off of what Paul was saying about I hate tarps myself, but with winter rye, I had really good luck growing it until like June, and just before it starts to go to that milk stage, I have a medium-sized tractor that I'll drive over it, and it takes a little while to do that, but I drive over it and it'll actually snap the plant, and 99% of it is killed off in that way, where I don't have to tarp it, and it leaves like this nice big mat. But you're driving on your bed, so I don't do it in some of the areas. So, but if you have like a place where you can do that, it works really well.
Have you ever like that sort of kind of like roller kind of crimping on a
Yeah, it's kind of like a spin on what Frith Farm's doing, what Daniel Mays is doing, with the board where they're crimping it and he still tarps it, but maybe it's the weight of the tractor or the timing. I'm not sure, but it really kills it all. And the other thing is to grow it really, really thick. It has to be, the plants have to be very close together so that they're falling on top of each other, and they're, you know what I mean? Like the weight of them are killing off the plants that you're flopping on top of each other, I guess. But I can't do it everywhere. Like I said, there's some areas I'm not rolling my tractor onto some of the beds that, that you've broad forked and stuff and getting compaction.
So once you've rolled it over, how do you turn it back into a bed?
I kind of just leave it, and it just kind of, so you got to pick the things that you want to plant in there. Like I've planted corn right into it, or squash just directly into the mat.
You've had good luck with that?
I'm still kind of experimenting with it, but yeah, it works. It definitely works.
Yeah, we did a no-till pumpkin that way this year, where it was rolled and then planted into the.
Yeah, I had some pumpkins that I did with that. The corn is tough because you're spreading the mat apart, and you got to put your individual seeds in there. That's a little bit difficult. But I have a drill. I'll drill it out and just drop them in there, but it's a lot of manual work.
Yeah.
Instead of using a seeder. But it's something I've been playing with for a while.
How do the pumpkins do, Elliot?
Oh, not great. No, they were okay. No, I think it's one of those things. It's like kind of the holy grail, the no-till planting into cover crops. But I think that the applications for it are.
Did you fertilize?
Yeah, I think it's just limited to. I mean, you can't grow like you're saying, like if you're trying to direct sow something, it doesn't really work. And we had a hard time like really killing the cover crop. it's just sort of I think you can, like pumpkins or maybe squash. I think if you could get it going for that, but then other things, there just seems to be big barriers to doing it, like anything direct sown or like, yeah.
How did you kill it?
How do we do that, Paul?
Well, we got better at killing it. I was just really unimpressed with the way the pumpkins grew. So we've been messing around with the crimper for 2 years, and I don't like to grow rye by itself, so we always throw vetch in there, and the problem is the rye matures ahead of the vetch, so you'll roll the rye and vetch down when the rye is ready, but the vetch is not ready to kick it yet. So we've waited a week or two and then clipped it with a flail mower, so the rye is flat and the vetch will bend back up, and then if you hit it one more time, we found that does kill it. And I took all kinds of pictures because of this, because I'm like, we're finally gonna do it. We can be cool no-tillers. And we found that there was a lot of weed seeds that were germinating under this mat. It wasn't quite enough to be weed suppressive, and they got I don't think the weeds were the problem. The pumpkins, they were right next to some tilled winter squash, which did great. We have insane amounts of butternut if anybody wants some for their CSA. But the growth of those pumpkins was really slow, and we did fertilize them. Yeah, we tried. We got this thing from Knowles, and we tried to hook that up in front of our water wheel transplanter and punch in the pumpkins, but we gave up. And then I had one of our folks went down and planted them. That's why I did pumpkins, because we plant them every, I think it's 3 or 4 feet, so it wasn't a big deal to plant it by hand, and we don't grow a lot of pumpkins. But the growth of those plants was unimpressive compared to the winter squash right next door. So that, I don't know what to make of that, whether it was just cool ground or what, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Paul. I feel like even after you kill the rye, you know, that whole allelopathic thing is still kind of like still a little bit there, you know? I don't know.
Well,
really.
these were transplants, so allelopathy traditionally is, an inhibition of seedling germination. So these were plenty healthy transplants that should have just kicked into gear.
Well, when I say that our cash crops were affected, those were transplanted ones next to the rye. I mean, they were still alive, but still, it's not like seed germinated or the germination was bad or anything. It was that the plants were completely stunted.
I don't know. I guess you could run an experiment where you scrape the rye residues away and put something else in, but we've mixed rye into this. I mean, like we've done this. Actually, the winter squash next door was the same stuff mixed into the soil. So I almost think it'd be worse if you had the residues right next to the roots. And I've actually never, I would love to see rye allelopathy. I never have. It certainly didn't bother the Galansoga that germinated underneath it. So there was really no inhibition of weeds at all, either physical or allelopathic. So it wasn't the first thing I reached for, although yeah, I guess it could be something like that. They just didn't grow well, and we tried scratching some fertilizer in next, that was by hand too, next to each plant. Or no, I guess we dropped that with our drop spreader, but we yeah, and I mean other people do it, so we must be missing something, but it wasn't. I would say if you try this stuff, definitely pick little pieces and see how it goes, because it's definitely there's a lot of bugs to work out.
Yeah, I had a lot of weeds myself doing that. Eventually it rots into the ground and just opens up the ground, and the weeds just come.
Right. Yeah. It's tough.
Well, I talked to Daniel, this is in like 2018, I think it was, when I went to Daniel May's, he was at some farm in Massachusetts, and I asked him if he fertilized after a rye terminated, cover crop, and he said no. And now I know for a fact he does. So maybe he found that without, that he definitely needs like a boost fertility afterwards.
It definitely, maybe we need to up the fertilizer relative to what we normally use in a tillage situation. That probably couldn't hurt.
I have a question. Hi, Yoko. It's Charlene. I was just wondering, as we were talking about weeds early on in the presentation, you said your weeds are low, and I was just wondering what contributes to that.
It's partly how we started our farm. So we had a tarp down for a whole year, which people hear that and they go to their farm and put a tarp down for like 3 months. And it's you have to have it down for a full year. That gets rid of your perennials, and then you definitely do have annuals come up a little bit, not that much, but you just have to just pick every single weed and put it in a bucket and just do that until basically they're all gone. Which it's not.
Is there an easy way though?
It's not as crazy as it sounds because of that tarp. That initial tarping really helps, and yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying we got a weed.
Yeah, it's invest in it. Invest in your time now for a weedless future.
Have you battled some mugwort?
Actually, I sowed some for a plant sale once because mugwort is like a prize thing in Japan, and that got loose and got in our field once, but not like a native like weed, the weed mugwort.
I find it seems to love growing my wood chips. The more wood chips that I grow that I have, it just loves that environment.
I think our biggest weed is probably sorrel. But
Yoko, can you explain again when you're using the black tarps versus the clear greenhouse plastic?
yeah, the black tarp is for overwintered cover crops, includes rye. That's because once it gets tall, it's like really difficult to terminate. Yeah. So yeah, that's for the overwintered stuff, and then the solarization is for everything else. So summer, spring and summer is cover crops are terminated with a clear plastic.
Thanks.
All right, well, if no one has anything else, I guess we can call it. Any last words, any final words of wisdom? All the wisdom's out. Well, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Yoko.
thanks so much.
Really appreciate it.
Good night.
Thanks for putting it together, Elliot. I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, no, a lot of questions. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you for taking the time. And yeah, I think people liked it.
All right, cool.
We have our focus group. What do you think, Kyle? What do you think over here, folks who are left behind? Comments?
No, I thought it was really good.
Anything you change for the next one?
I don't know. I think it was good. I think you did a good job. I don't. Nothing comes to mind.
I feel like in a way you kind of think it's going to be a little bit more like interactive, but like if it's a big group, it's hard to manage that interaction. But then I think it would be nice for people to have their videos on at least, or something like that.
Do you think?
Yeah.
You think we should force people to put their question in the chat, and then we should force them to read it, or is that the people who don't want to do that? That's not fair too.
Right, and that might just kind of take up more time. Just
I
Yeah.
guess we just,
Well, you might be dealing with this kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly.
And then some people's like mics are like not working or on.
I guess that was fine. People, yeah, it worked out. I thought there'd be a little more, but that's fine. It was a lot of people, which was great.
Yeah, this was great.
Yoko, I was wondering, could I chat with you directly sometime in the near future? Would you be open to that?
Of
I have a
course.
small scale farm similar to size as yours. I'm just a little bit under an acre, and we're looking to incorporate more cover crops into the scenario, and would just love to pick your brain on some more technical stuff if you're open to that.
Yeah, just text
Okay.
me and like, and then you can call me. We can set up a time and we can chat.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to share stuff about my operation if you have any questions for me too. So I've been at it for 7 years, so I think we're pretty similar operations, time of farming,
Yeah.
style of farming.
But where
I
are
do
you?
know too.
Where's your
I'm
main?
in New York, about an hour and a half north of New York City.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, we're
just
reaching
on the,
New York
yeah.
audiences here, Elliot.
close to the
Are you on
Connecticut
a
border.
list? Do you
Yeah, I
Okay.
am. I kind of cheat and get access to Connecticut farmer stuff with my New York address, I guess. I don't know.
No,
But-
everyone's welcome. No, that's cool. All right, awesome. Cool.
But yeah, sorry, my son is going through the spice rack today, so
Oh,
I'm gonna let you go, and I look forward to connecting with you soon, Yoko.
yep. All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Yoko.
Elliot, bye.
Bye.